Hello everyone, and welcome back to Terra Raid Counters. Today we have the level 7 EMPOLEON Terra Ice Raid. We're going to be running from February 2nd until Sunday, February 4th, and then once again from February 9th until February 11th. Now, because these raids do start a day before, quote-unquote, technically for people outside of UTC time, it will be starting on the 1st of February, so just subtract one day for the start time, because it'll be starting at, well, local UTC time. They're really, they keep doing UTC time. But, as for the moves and the ability that this EMPOLEON is going to be packing, this is a little bit problematic considering our normal way of beating these things is debuffing, and this thing will be having competitive as an ability. But before we get on to the moves, the abilities, and everything that allows you to absolutely shrek this EMPOLEON. But before we get on to the counters, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more. In the future, we've got a whole bunch of videos. The next Legends game that's going to be coming out, the Unova remakes, predictions for Pokémon Days announcements, and many, many other sort of things that I know you guys are going to love. So now, on to the counters. And, in the upcoming weeks, we do have a shiny giveaway that is going to be resuming. The Rayquaza is still up for grabs. Now for its moves. EMPOLEON does get a fairly interesting assortment of moves. It has things such as Air Slash, Grass Knot, but very likely it will be packing 3 stabs with Snowscape, Blizzard as its Ice-type stabs, and Surf and Flash Cannon for its Water and Steel stabs. The problem with EMPOLEON is our typical way of dealing with raids is to debuff them into absurdity. EMPOLEON has competitive, which anytime you debuff EMPOLEON stats, it will get a double special attack boost. Think, anytime you debuff this thing, it gets a free nasty plot. Which is why either suppressing the ability or removing the ability will be very important. The only issue with this is you're going to need to bring Wheezing, which has neutralizing gas, which also shuts down every single ally's ability as well, which is not necessarily a good thing when a lot of these Pokemon are somewhat dependent on their abilities in order to do the most damage possible. And when EMPOLEON then purges the abilities, that just completely shuts down any chance of debuffing again. So, not really a great status. That's why ideally you're going to want to remove it, but if it does have the Terra Shield applied immediately, you're kind of boned on that. So Galarian Wheezing and regular Wheezing may be an option open, but only if the lead-off is instant Terra Shield. Other than that, we have another way of handling it that completely shuts it down and allows you to debuff it. The first counter is not a fighting type or anything that is actually super effective against ice, it's actually Azumarill. Main reason for this is Azumarill has almost no reason to fear EMPOLEON. EMPOLEON does have Grass Knot, but Azumarill is a very light Pokemon, meaning it doesn't take a whole lot of damage. The worst case is going to be taking a Flash Cannon. But you're water, you're fairy, you resist ice, you resist water, Flash Cannon is the only thing you have to worry about, and you have Belly Drum, you have fighting moves with Brick Break, you have Superpower if it gets down to that point. There's a lot of good things Azumarill has going for it that just make it ability to wall EMPOLEON almost unparalleled. Actually, it is second to none in terms of being able to take hits from EMPOLEON. But it is not second to none when it comes to dealing damage. For that, we go to our old standbys, Hariyama and Iron Hands. Now, Hariyama and Iron Hands, as well as almost everything else on this list, is actually going to be wanting the Stellar Terra type. Reason for that? You deal even more bonus damage, and a number of Pokemon do actually want to preserve their natural typings. You're going to want Terra Fighting or Terra Stellar for the Hariyama. But as for Hariyama's moves, are actually not that dissimilar from Iron Hands, with Belly Drum and Drain Punch and whatever other fighting type moves of choice will go on the Hariyama. Adamant Nature, 252 physical attacking EVs, with everything else being put into special defense. With Iron Hand, there's a slight difference. You want Charge. The reason for this is Charge gives you a 1-stage increase to your special defense, allowing you to take hits from the EMPOLEON better than you can. Otherwise, you want to lead off with Charge, not lead off with Belly Drum. Better to scout out when does EMPOLEON do the stat purge, These things have generally been doing a stat purge on turn 2, turn 3 to punish us for doing turn 1 setups with Belly Drum. So hold off, wait till it stat purges, then go for the Belly Drum. Just keep using Drain Punches before then, or use Charge. Now, the Hariyama, you're going to want Thick Fat on it. This gives you a resistance to Ice-type moves, and with its naturally good HP and naturally quite okay special defense for its massive HP stat, you're able to tank hits relatively well. Now, there is one critical problem when it comes to Empoleon. It does get Feather Dance, meaning it can heavily debuff you. So, Defiant users are quite useful here, however, because Feather Dance is a 2-stage debuff, you just stay neutral. So, for things like Iron Hands, Iron Hands and also Hariyama, you may want to actually be running the Clear Amulet, just so Feather Dance doesn't bother it. Contrary, yes, I had to go do that pun, to that, Malamar, and to a lesser degree Lurantis, is fantastic here. With Contrary, it can run Superpower, it can run Terrastellar Terra Blast, and it is not penalized. If anything, it benefits. Contrary makes any debuff go to a buff, and any buff go to a debuff. So if Empoleon tries to hit you with Feather Dance, that's a free Swords Dance, functionally. Every time you click Superpower, your attack and your defense go up by 1 stage. It allows you to snowball to an insane degree. So you are going to want Terrastellar on specifically this one. If you don't have enough to Terrastellar everything, priority goes to Malamar. It's far better than Lurantis, as Lurantis does have some issues to deal with when it comes, well, to not getting blasted by Ice-type moves. And also, Terrastellar Terra Blast also decreases your stats as well, which is convert them to boost. So, in every way, this Malamar is one of your best. It takes some time to get going, and when the ability to purge does happen, that is a little bit problematic, because then you can't use your attacking with it. Malamar thankfully does get an interesting move in Topsy-Turvy. All stat changes affecting the target turn topsy-turvy and become the opposite. So what this means is, if Empoleon is buffing itself, those get converted into debuffs. Now you might be wondering, but won't that activate Defiant or Competitive? The answer is no. Defiant and Competitive only proc on stage changes being actively inflicted, so a move like Thunderous Kick actively inflicts a -1 defense debuff. If instead the debuff is swapped onto it, say through Topsy-Turvy or Guard Swap, Power Swap, anything like that, where you are giving it a debuff, but not inflicting it. I know, sounds a bit weird, but trust me on this, I've done this before many times, and that doesn't proc the ability. So if this thing gets Iron Defense, and it goes to +6 defense with Iron Defense, Topsy-Turvy, immediately that turns into a -6 defense. Topsy-Turvy is also a single target move, meaning you don't convert your allies' buffs into debuffs. You only convert the Pokemon being targeted, its buffs into debuffs, and debuffs into buffs. Also works very well for if it's Feather Dancing your allies, you can use Topsy-Turvy on them, and it converts those debuffs into buffs. So it actually is in many ways a very good utility partner. You're going to want to increase its special defense on this, but Adamant Nature, 2v2 in physical attack, and 2v2 in special defense is the way you're going to want to roll with this thing. Malamar's special defense is less than desirable. Skeledirge is also quite good here. You may be wondering why, as it is a fire type with relatively low special defense, and that comes down to it gets Torch Saw. Yes, it gets Torch Saw, which is one of the best moves for self-buffing. Power-Up Punch does not exist, so you're gonna need to be brute forcing through that. As well as, it's very likely that this Empoleon is gonna be setting up Snowscape at the beginning, which gives a 50% boost to its physical defense. Empoleon's lower defensive stat is actually its physical defense, but with the 50% boost that it gets from the snow, that natural base 88 defense becomes something more along the lines of a functional 130, 140, if not even higher physical defense, as opposed to its 101 special defense. So you are by far better off targeting its special defense if you are not able to instantly boost up like that. Also, if you do remove the sun and you activate Sunny Day, that massively increases fire-type moves damage as well. But removing the weather is something that would also still benefit the physical fighting types and even just the physical attackers in general, so I would generally recommend, if you're doing that, stick with the fighting types. But Skeledirge can do decently well. You will want to boost up its special defense quite a bit, as its special defense is relatively lacking compared to its physical defense, but its special attack is fantastic, and again, Torch Song allows it to snowball. You could say it's a snowball's chance attack. Corviknight is an old standby and is always fantastic. You're going to want to jack up its physical defense into Oblivion, you're going to want to give it mirror armor, you're going to want to fully invest in its physical defense, iron defense, body press. Also, Taunt is quite good as it shuts down any shenanigans with other status moves Empoleon may be planning on using. Thankfully, Empoleon doesn't really get self-buffing moves other than Swords Dance, and its physical move pool is relatively mediocre. So you don't need to worry about that too much. It doesn't really have any ways of making itself scary. So go in max on both defenses, give it a defense-boosting nature, and you're pretty much good. Just start boosting up and start pressing. Terra type on this, you're going to want to go with Terra Stellar once again. Potentially you can go Terra Fighting, but Empoleon does learn special flying moves such as Air Slash, so something to consider. In the same vein, we've got Zamazenta. There's two ways you can spec out the Zamazenta. You can either go with the Rusted Shield held item, or you can go with the Shell Bell. Reason for that is, with the Rusted Shield, you have a significantly higher physical defensive stat. With the Shell Bell, you can heal passively as you, attack. It also gets Iron Defense. It also is naturally the better body press user, as it has a natural stab on that body press. There's reasons to go with either form. Personally, I would rather the Crown Shield form, which is the form holding the Rusted Shield, and you can just have allies heal you, or use your own cheer to heal. Overall, it's quite good. Also, it does get Howl, so it can boost allies' offensive stats. And, in general, reliable, can take hits quite well, and also very, very fast. This one is going to look a little out of place, and you are not going to want the Habana Berry on this. You are probably going to want the Yacht Berry, or you're probably going to want the Shell Bell on this thing. Might be a bit weird going Koraidon. However, gets Drain Punch, gets Swords Dance, and you can also give it Sunny Day so it can immediately set the sun. With Collision Course, it is a bonus power fighting type move that deals extra damage when super effective. It is Stab. You're going to want Terra Fighting on this thing, because you're not going to want Terra Dragon, as, you're going to be weak to Ice at that point. Koraidon, quite strong. It does very much want to be in the sun, and its Drain Punch is second to none. Well, other than Iron Hands and Hariyama. A bit risky, but it can definitely pull out some big damage. In a bit of the same vein as the Zamazenta and the Corviknight, we have Dialga and Hisuian Gudra. Both of them get Iron Defense, and you can go with Shelter on your Hisuian Gudra or Gudra, and then use Body Press. Their advantages come in they are able to resist water-type damage. They do take more damage than ice-type damage, but they do have the advantage of just a better hit against water-type moves. If you're able to remove the snow, or the snow just simply wears off and you don't have sun set up, water-type damage will be a little bit of a worry, and Hisuian Gudra has the best special defense of anything here, which is what Empoleon is a special destroyer of. Much like before, max out the special defense, max out the physical defense, and then just start body pressing. King Gambit is probably the last of these Pokemon. It gets Defiant, but I would not recommend it. Its special defense is relatively poor compared to a number of the other Pokemon here, and it doesn't offer the same utility. It does get Defiant, but it's not necessarily as hard of a hitter. You need to give it the Shell Bell, and it doesn't have the same capacity to restore its own HP. Something like Annihilate I would recommend more, but Annihilate has some associated risks with it is weak to flying, and if Defiant doesn't really work, it doesn't really get the same kind of Swords Dance boost. Something like, say, King Gambit can get off, or Rhydon. Which is why I would say generally leave it to the Belly Drum fighting types. But you can use King Gambit, and I would say it's not the best, but it is usable. Now for your support Pokemon, Cresselia. Luna Blessing keeps allies' health topped off. Mist prevents stats from going down. I would not recommend using Moonblast here, as that will very likely proc a competitive boost. So just focus on healing and setting up Mist to prevent those debuffs. And again, keeping allies topped up on HP. The real winner is Poltergeist. Weak Armor Skill Swap. It's bread and butter. If it does not lead with the Terra Shield, this is going to be the most critical Pokemon to the entire battle. First of all, it will remove competitive, so you can actually inflict debuffs on this thing. But second, it has weak armor. You will be able to inflict it with an ability that anytime you hit it, it will decrease its physical defense. It'll increase its speed, but Empoleon is not as big of an offensive threat as something like the previous Blaziken was, where Blaziken does have Bulk Up, it does have Swords Dance, it does have vastly more powerful moves. Empoleon's special attack is 111, which is actually higher than Blaziken's, but Blaziken had significantly more powerful moves because it had things like Bulk Up. Things that were much more dangerous. So getting a relatively fast Empoleon is not as big of a worry. And if it does lead off with the Terra Shield, there is always the option of neutralizing gas Wheezing. I would not use Galarian Wheezing, as Galarian Wheezing is part Fairy, and that will get Flash Cannon beamed into Oblivion. Instead, you want to go with regular Cantonian Wheezing, max out its special defense, not its physical defense, max out its HP, and give it something like the Black Sludge, possibly the Assault Vest, and Acid Spray, and any other move that could be beneficial for it, but Wheezing is not necessarily a good Pokemon for this battle. It would be there just to sit in front of the Empoleon, remove its ability, and let allies inflict debuffs. Don't recommend doing that for two reasons. One, you need to have a Pokemon that is exclusively there for debuffs, so half your team is really not doing any damage. You need a dedicated debuffer, something like, say, Galarian Zapdos with Thunderous Kick, or something with a physical defense crushing move like Screech, and only if Screech is able to be used because the shield goes up. Because Grav Apple from Appleton, or not Apple, Flapple is not a good call here. It'll get beamed by ice and go away forever. Again, not necessarily the greatest of things to go with Wheezing. What's it say? Poltergeist. Now, that's why Poltergeist is the better bring. Would not recommend bringing Ceruledge here. You can if you're doing a coordinated group with a Sun team, but I would recommend steering a bit clear of the, well, Fire-type Swordsman, the Flame Swordsman. And that's just because things such as Hariyama are naturally not weak to water, and water will demo Ceruledge quite heavily. Drain Punch also is more powerful when coming from a belly drum boost than waiting for the Swords Dances to get popping off. But all in all, you can use Ceruledge, but only if Sunny Day is able to be applied relatively quickly. And watch out for those water moves. But that is all from this end. Once again, if you guys haven't done so already, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more, Thank you all for tuning in. We do have the shiny giveaway that is going to be going off into the future. We have several more videos coming out that are in the works. Things such as going over the most difficult champions and what made them the most difficult in the Pokemon series. And predictions for Pokemon Day and the next Legends game that is coming out and the Gen 5 remakes. See you guys then.